Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to 21st Century Literature class. And for today's topic, we'll be dealing with lesson number 3. Lesson number 3 will be dealing with literary genres of 21st century literature from pre-colonial going to the 21st. And for this vlog, we're going to use the avenue of Zoom wherein I'm going to share you the presentation while I'm filming the discussion for each topic. So I hope you learned something from this, and this will also be easier for you to learn something about in your module. Hi everyone, welcome back to lesson 103 of 21st century literature class. And for today's topic, we'll be dealing with literary genres, elements, structures, and techniques in Philippine literature. So let's now proceed with the topics under this. So here, we're going to look into the literary genres from each period, from the pre-colonial, Spanish, Revolutionary, the American, Japanese, and 21st century. So let's now proceed. Before we go on to the different periods, we need to understand first the literary genre. What is literary genre? So literary genre is basically the category of literary composition. So genres may be determined by the literary technique, tone, content, or even the length. So you may understand and may identify what literary genre is it depending on the technique used by the author, the tone used by the author, and the content surrounding the literary work, or even the length of the literary work. So the distinctions between genres and categories are flexible. It may loosely defined and often with subgroups. So for example, the short story, these are subgroups of the novels because the novels are the longer ones while the short stories are the shorter one, the shorter story. Okay? So let's now proceed. Let's now proceed with the pre-colonial period. Here at the pre-colonial period, we do have the riddles. So riddles, as what we call them in Tagalog, we do have bugtong. So these are the mystifying statements or questions, phrase, and rhyme to require ingenuity in determining its answer. So the talinhaga or the metaphor is dominant in any riddles because it discloses subtle comparisons between unlike things, and observation are required in these mental exercises. The examples of riddles or their names or classifications of riddles in Visayans, they call them as tigmo. While for the Tagalog, we do have, as I have told you, bugtong. And for the Ilonggos, we do have paktakon. And for the Bicolanos, we do have atututdon. Okay? So these are the examples of bugtong. For tigmo, for the Ilonggos. So for the Visayans, we do have this one. Baboy sa lasang, ang tunok puro lansang. So the English version is a wild pig in the forest is covered with spikes. So the answer here is nangka or langka. While for the paktakon, ano nga tuburon, masulog sa tag-init, ginabubsan kong tag-ulan. So the English version is what spring flow in summer and run dry on rainy days. So the answer for that is balhas, sweat, or pawis. So for us, we do have andyan na si kaka, pabuka-bukakas, which is the answer is kunting. And there's some more. So let's now proceed with the next one. We do have also proverbs. So here, for proverbs, this is what we call sawikain or salawikain in Tagalog. So sawikain or salawikain, this mirrors the codes of behavior, the societal norms, the traditions, and beliefs, and impart lessons in brief or rhyming verse. So the example for Ilocano, we do have ti agutak, si isot ng itlog. The English version, he who cockles lay the egg. For the Hiligaynos version, we do have kon hindi ikaw magantos, hindi ka gid magsantos. English version, if you don't sacrifice, you can't be a saint. So for us Tagalogs, we do have ang kapag maiksi ang kumot, matuto ka mamaluktot, which talks about being thrifty. So that's about Proverbs. Now let's now move on to songs. Songs are forms of folk. Lyrics speak volumes of the typical rural lives and reflect people's aspirations and lifestyles. As you see, songs are used by our forefathers or forebears in banding with our community. It is also used in their daily lives when they want to court, when they want to court women, when they want to make their babies asleep, when they want to bond with their community. So those are songs. So here we do have examples of it. For example, folk songs, awit ng bayan, lalabay, or the serenade. So we do have here the folk songs. So folk songs are classified as awit ng bayan. These are songs with lines described as repetitive, didactic, and sonorous. So the following are examples of famous Filipino folk songs. So we do have Dandan Soy from the Visayan folk song, and we do have Magtanim Ay Di Biiro for the Tagalog folk song. I know you're very familiar with this one because your teachers way back in elementary let you sing this one like Magtanim Ay Di Biiro, maghapong nakayo ko. Are you familiar with it already? So those are examples of folk songs. So let's proceed with the next one. Another song is the lullaby song. So lullaby song is presented and sung to put babies to sleep. So these are the examples of the Ilocanos lullaby song in the English translation. Maturug duya, maturug kad tay bunga, tay lalaki nga napigsa, ta inton dumakel tay bunga. Isunto ayatay mamati, tay amon a ibagami. Okay? As you see, their language is really distinctive in terms of their quality. So we do have also the Tagalog version for the lullaby. We do have Sa Ugoy ng Duyan. Sa Ugoy ng Duyan sings like this. So, sa piling ni nanay, langit ang buhay. I'm not very familiar with the line. So it's more of that's the rhyme, that's the rhythmic song of the Sa Ugoy ng Duyan. So let's now move on with the last one. First song, we do have serenading. Serenading is a way of men way back then to court the women and capture the heart of the girl that they love. So the examples of this is like the ones that that you heard from your tatay, like O ilaw sa gabing madilim. Yan. So those are the ways of your fathers to court your mother about courtship. So now, though our modern men still use serenading, but they have the modern version of it already. But way back then, they say that if you were serenaded by men way back then, it's like you are a beautiful woman. So have you experienced serenaded by a man? If you do, you are lucky and blessed. Okay, so let's now move on to another literary genre under pre-colonial. The other literary genre at the pre-colonial is chant or chants or bulong. So these are used to give respect, excuse, or apology to unseen or other elemental spirits our ancestors believe in to deliver them from danger or harm. So most of these chants, we try to look into this one and see this one if they are already in the films. And then kapag hindi ka nag-chant o hindi ka nagkaroon ng bulong, pwedeng makanti mo yung mga anito o kaya makanti mo yung mga mga espiritu o mga elemento. That's why chants or bulong are very famous way back then. Kasi ang ating mga matatanda, they really believe with anito, they really believe with elemental spirits. Okay? So the example of this one is for Tagalog, tabi-tabi po, ingkong makikiraan po lamang, or like tabi-tabi po nuno, dadaan lang po. While for the Ilocano, we do have bari-bari po apo, umisbo lating tao. Or the other one, ikaw ang nagnanakaw ng bigas ko. Lumuwa sana ang mata mo, mamaga sana ang katawan mo, patayin ka ng mga anito. So those are the examples of chants or bulong. So next one is epic. Epic is a kind of story, a heroic story, a long narrative accounts of heroic exploits. The examples of this are Darangin in Maranao, Aliguyon, Hudhud in Nufugao, Indra Patra Sulaiman, Ibalon. So another one also, the literary genre is mythology or myths. So myths are symbolic narrative wherein there is a known origin and at least partly traditional. Mostly, myths have their gods and goddesses as part of the characters. So the examples of this are the story of Bathala, ang pag-aaway ng dagat at langit. So like that. So most of the time may gods and goddesses yan. Like for example, the Greek mythology that we have into the century of the Greek century. Next one, we do have legends. I know you're very familiar with this one. Legends, or what we call alamat. So these are stories that explain the origin of things and phenomena in the surrounding world. Ito ay pak na pak sa mga bata, because when our children or the young children are very curious of something, we try to give them the stories of legends. So the legend stories like the legend of Maria Makiling, the legend of Mayon, the legend of Sampaguita, the legend of Manga, like that. And those legends, moral values are incorporated, or values are incorporated into the different legend stories. Now, let's now move on with fables. Fables are stories of characters of animals. So, they use animals as characters to represent a particular attribute or characteristic. So, one of the most orally narrated Filipino fables is Ang Kuneho at Ang Pagong. So, Ang Kuneho at Ang Pagong, it's more of late man nakapunta, but still at least nakapunta pa rin. Kumbaga, naunahan pa siya ni Pagong kahit na ito lang ang skills niya, ito lang ang capability niya. Inunahan niya kasi ng sipag at inunahan niya ng tagtyaga. So, from the fable stories, you will learn moral values incorporated with it. Another one is folktales. Folktales, or what we call kwentong bayan. Kwentong bayan are stories that wield with the power of nature, personified, submission to a deity or bathala, and how the deity is responsible for the blessings and the curses in the form of calamities, often passed on from generation to generation by word of mouth. So, ito yung mga kwento ng mga lolo't lola natin. Yung katulad ng mga kwento din ito ng mga katulad niyang kwento ni Juan Tamad. So, kwento ni Juan Tamad is under Kwentong Bayan. Okay, next. Next one under would be Spanish period. So, under here, under Spanish period, I know you're very familiar of what is the setting or context that we're talking about here. So, this is a colonization of Spaniards. So, kung colonization of Spaniards to, most of the literary genres present here are more of Christ, more of fighting for freedom. So the examples of this are Sinakulo. I know you're very familiar with this one, like a Filipino dramatization of the life and times of Jesus, or the Passion, which is about the reciting stanzas with 5 lines of 8 syllables. And yung pagkanta ng Passion is different from pagkanta ng normal lang kinakanta, because they have one monotonous tone of when you're reading or singing the Passion. Another one is Dalit. Dalit is a song praising God or the Virgin Mary and containing a philosophy of life also become popular, or what we call as salmo. Dalit or salmo can be clearly heard into mga ito sa simbahan o kaya ay sa mga misa or like that. Next one is very famous also into the Spanish colonization is about the period also is the secular or non-secular literature tales of adventure. The examples of this is the awit, which talks about the 12 syllables or dodecasyllabic and are slowly sung to the accompaniment of guitar or bandurria. So the example of this is the story of Florante at Aura from Francisco Baltasar. Another one is corrido. Corrido is about metrical romances and tales that follow a structure of a poem and recited to a martial beat, and more often, the tales are more of chivalry, mga hari at reyna, mga prinsipe at prinsesa, like isa-save nila yung princess, like that. So, the example of that is Ibong Adarna. Another one is Karagatan. Karagatan, now we call it as eulogy already. This is a poetic vehicle of socio-religious nature celebrated during the death of a person. Ito yung tula na tinutula kapag may mga to tribute that person. Okay? So next one would be duplo. Duplo, we call them as now as balagtasan. So duplo is a poetic joust in speaking and reasoning. Another one is prose narratives. Prose narratives are instructional materials that teach Filipinos proper decorum. Proper decorum is about proper ways on how Filipino women should act. Okay? So, pagsusulatan ng dalawang binibini na si Urbana at Felisa is the example. Another one is zarzuela. Zarzuela is a type of drama that originated in Spain that includes singing and dancing on stage with lyrics, alternative spoken and sung in operatic and popular styles. The example of this one is Moro Moro. Next one is the revolutionary literature. So revolutionary literature is about the type of literature is about revolutionizing Filipinos to fight for their freedom. That's why their essay is more of fighting for freedom and fighting for freedom of the Filipinos against the colonizers, against those people who tries to get and step into the right. So the essay here, and most of the literary works here or literary genre that they use here is essay. Essay is a piece of writing that gives authors arguments. So it can either be formal or informal. But way back then, the one that they are using is informal. Formal essay are more of like research, so they don't normally use that. What they use is informal essay to fight for the freedom. So next one is about the American period. American period wherein education is available for all Filipinos, not only for men. So here we have the accessibility already of using both English and Filipino as our language. So free writing is used here. So free verse writing is also present here. So free verse or free writing is about no rhetorical concerns or conventions and mechanics, meaning no limitation of structure. Next one is drama. So drama is a composition of verse or prose presenting a story in a pantomime or dialogue. This is very popular when we are degraded by the Spanish rule and immortalized the heroism of Filipinos who fought under the Katipuneros. So remake of novels also took up Dr. Jose Rizal's portrayal of social conditions under colonial repression. As you will see with No Limitang Here and El Filibusterismo, if you're going to play it, theatrically or in drama and all, they try to drama is incorporated into El Filibusterismo and Noli Me Tangere, wherein there is a degrading part of the Spanish rule to the Filipinos. Next one is Comedia. Comedia is theatrical tradition by Filipinos, sometimes in a form of singing. While Zarzuela, like the ones that I told you, is a play with songs and dances usually written in prose, containing from 1 to 5 acts, depicting the vagaries of romantic love among idealized Filipino characters. Okay? That incorporates contemporary, political, economic, or cultural issues for relevance and interest. Now, let's now move on to Japanese period and the Republic. So the Japanese period, as you see, though for only 3 years, plays, novels, poems, short stories are very famous in this period. Plays are work of drama, usually consisting mostly of dialogue between characters and intended for theatrical performance, while novels are more of fictitious narrative book of length, meaning mas mahaba siya sa short stories because novels comprise of chapters of short stories that are incorporated and has sequels. While the poems, we do have haiku, which is very famous here. 3 lines having 5 syllables for first stanza, 7 syllables for second stanza, and at the third stanza, another 5 syllables. So short stories here, this requires 20 minutes to 1 hour, meaning can be read for 1 sitting. So writing during the Japanese reign were journalistic in nature. People felt suppressed, but the spirit of nationalism slowly seeped into their consciousness. So like the ones that I have told you at the Japanese period, we used already the Tagalog language in our forms or in making our own literature. Next one is about the 21st century literature of the Philippines, or may we incorporate already this one as contemporary period. Here, the literary works are, there's a sense of freedom already. So, gender sensitive, technologically, alluding, culturally pluralistic, operates on the extreme reality or extreme fiction, and questions, convention, and supposedly absolute norms. There is already freedom in terms of making our own literary works. And we try to incorporate it already with a modern technology. So here, Filipinos have already adapted, invented, and write some literary innovations. So Philippine literature nowadays deals with current themes on technological, culture, and traces artistic representation of shared experience. So these are the well-known literary genres under 21st century literature. So we do have the drama, wherein I have already told you what is in the drama. The creative nonfiction, which is also known as literary nonfiction or narrative nonfiction, that uses literary styles, techniques to create factually accurate narratives. We do have also the blog wherein we try to put the literary work that we have into our computer. So some blogs are written by one person and we call them as blogger, which contain his or her hobby, interests, or opinions and experiences. So, as a blogger, it depends. Are you a travel blogger? Are you a sports blogger? It depends on what literary content do you want to share. Another one is poetry. So, poetry, I know you're very familiar with this one, wherein there is a rhythmic sound. It is written through stanza. Words are not in literal form, but they are interpreted through figuratively. So poetry. So if fiction is concerned with plot action, poetry is more of life distilled. Words are very powerful into the form of poetry. So the example of poetry under 21st century literature we do have is mobile phone textula. Mobile phone textula is a tanaga, a type of Filipino poem, wherein there is a structure of syllabic verse like 777 and has also rhyming scheme. Rhyming scheme is about the ending sound of each line for the stanza has the same or is the same with the next line and the next line and the next line. So like AA, first line and second line, they have the same sound, ending sound. BB, third line and fourth line, they have the same ending sound. So that is what you mean by the rhyming scheme. Okay? So next one is the hyperpoetry. Hyperpoetry is a form of digital poetry. Basically, the poem is presented online. The poem is presented to your cell phone. The poem is presented through to your PC. So this is a form of digital poetry that uses links using hypertext markup. It is a very visual form and is related to hypertext fiction and visual arts. So when you see your poem into the digital, and then you see their blue one, and then when you click that one, you can link into another website. That is hyperpoetry. So next one is the spoken word poetry, and I know you're very familiar with this one, and you have already did this in your lesson number 2, performance task. So spoken word poetry is basically this is a poem that has made its way into the hearts and souls of thousands of Filipinos, especially the millennials. Here at spoken word poetry, you're not very particular with the structure, but you're very particular with the rhyming sounds. Because if you're the reader and the audience, it is heartbreaking and it is heartfelt poem if it is in a rhyming sound, if it's in a spoken word poetry. So this is a type of poem performed or read in artistic and emotive manner, which can be accompanied by music or presented in the streets or bars, even cafe shops. It is an oral art that focuses on the aesthetics of words, plays such as an intonation and voice inflection. Sometimes, kahit na maganda ang poem sa spoken word poetry, pag hindi siya na-deliver ng maganda at wala siyang power, walang feelings, spoken word, the poem that you use for spoken word poetry ay nawawalang saysay o kaya ay hindi siya masyado nakakahilakbot o hindi masyado nakakagising. That's why, if you are the one, or if you're the writer, or the one who recites a spoken word poetry or poem, if you want to put justice on it, you need to put feelings when reciting the poem so that you may awaken the hearts and minds of your reader and your audience. So next one, also for the literary genre, is the fiction. Fiction, we do have two types of literature. We do have fiction and non-fiction. Fiction is basically not true, while non-fiction is the opposite of it, which is true. So here, we're going to talk about only fiction. So fiction is about genres that can be defined as narrative literary works wherein it is just produced by imagination and invention and made-up story. In short, hindi totoo. But the story may be incorporated with a true to life. Did you get what I mean? I mean, the story is based on other stories that just be made up story. Okay? Next, so under fiction, we do have the different types. First is the short story, like the ones that I have told you. This is read only in one sitting and not able to support any subplots. And the other one, which is about the chicklet. Chicklet is a kind of literature, a kind of fiction literature that addresses issues of modern womanhood, which is often humorously and lightheartedly. So this is not considered a direct subcategory of the romance novel because the focus of this one is not only the heroine's relationship with her family, but also the not only about the romantic relationship but also the relationship with her family or friends. Next one is the flash fiction. Flash fiction, kaya flash meaning this the style of fictional literature or fiction of extreme brevity. There is no widely accepted definition of the length of the category. Some describe it as just a 300 words, or some would use 1,000 words to be a flash fiction. So here we do have also the realistic fiction. Realistic fiction because it is a story based on real life. So we do have also the historical fiction under this, like frightful, shocking, terrifying, or revolting stories. We do have also mystery fiction. Mystery fiction wherein it deals with unraveling of secrets and solutions of a crime, like the ones that you're watching from your Netflix, wherein it is a mystery type of story, wherein there is a crime that you want to solve, okay? Next one is the graphic novels. Graphic novels is basically a kind of story that is in comic book formats, wherein there is a drawing, there is a dialogue, like that. Next one is the speculative fiction. Speculative fiction is basically more of fantastical fiction genres wherein science is incorporated with the story. Okay? So, using supernatural natural fiction, superhero fiction, utopian, dystopian fiction, like that. Okay, the post-apocalyptic fiction, that is speculative fiction. So, under speculative fiction are the following. The science fiction, wherein they use the science or the impact of potential science into the story. For example, the San Andreas. Another one is, I know you're very familiar with San Andreas, wherein it is an earthquake story. Medyo OA nga lang siya kung titingnan, but if you're gonna be looking into that, pwede kasi siyang mangyari. Okay? Another one is fantasy. Fantasy is the forming of mental images with strange or other worldly settings or characters and invites suspension of reality. So, more of imagination here. And another one is about humor. This is also a kind of wherein the faculty of perceiving what is amusing or comical. This is more of fun, fancy, and excitement, which meant to entertain. Okay? So, for this lesson, at lesson number 3, you're going to perform you're going to write a poem or a story, or you're going to do a meme about the importance of literary genres into the literature. So, and you may also look into the importance of literature. Okay? So, after doing it, you're going to exchange your output to your other classmates. And you're going to analyze the work based on the criteria presented into your rubric. And also look into the importance of literature into what she has presented to you. Okay? So, how are you going to make the analysis? In a separate sheet of paper, you may just make comments, opinions about their work. Okay? So, you look into the criteria so that you will be guided. Okay? So, that will be the performance task of lesson number 3. So, I hope you learned something from this. And stay tuned and subscribe to my channel and like this video if you learned something. And also, please comment down below your name and your section. So that would be all for this lesson. And I want to end this lesson with the following quote by George Gissing. I know every book of mine by its smell, and I have but to put my nose between the pages to be reminded of all sorts of things. I hope you're gonna be like George Gissing, wherein you can smell every bit of pages and every bit of words that our literary works have, and identify what genre is it. Okay? So I think that would be all. Have a nice day and stay safe, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Goodbye.